Welcome back, and just like we did that before, couple of days ago we talked about a timescale DB, which was a new functionality of 4.2. If you missed that episode, don't hesitate to open the channel itself and you will find it there. But today we're going to talk about something very easy inside Zabbix, and once again, I'm gonna say this will be a short video. I really think that we should make it in like 10 minutes. Based on a previous experience, if I say 10 minutes, we usually shoot for like 20. But, well, let's go. Today I wanted to talk about runtime commands of the Zabbix binaries. When I mean the Zabbix binaries, it basically affects the Zabbix agent, the Zabbix server, proxy, and more or less that could be it. That's the stuff we're going to be talking today. First of all, the simplest thing, and the thing when multiple guys make a mistake when they're just starting to use Zabbix. So let's go ahead and the CLI. I have already Zabbix server running here. What happens like in 20+% of the times when somebody just made a decision to install a Zabbix, and you know that it is required to perform a change in the configuration file, which is stored in etc zabbix_server.conf. Then they open the file with a text editor, might be any of them, and they, I don't know, perform some changes in the configuration file and accidentally type something, like I did in this case, just a letter, which basically is nothing. And they save the file. What would be the next steps? Systemctl, I will do the restart because mine is already running. Restart the Zabbix server. And Zabbix server failed to execute because something isn't running. And if I'm not experienced enough, I might have question like what's wrong. And I could check the log file in the var log zabbix server.log, and there's nothing. I see that Zabbix server stopped, but I don't see any error messages regards how to start it. So I try to do that again, like systemctl start Zabbix server. Again, it failed. I would see the answer if I would type a journalctl -xa, but actually there is even easier way how to see the issue. Simply run the binary itself, and it is a Zabbix_server, right? Without a systemctl command. Click enter, and you see invalid entry, a not allowed parameter equals value notation in the config file, and you will even see the line number where you've made this mistake. So go back to the config file, find your A letter, and simply delete it. Delete it and save the file. Try the systemctl start Zabbix server again, and it will start successfully. There we go. You can tail the log file, Zabbix server log, and Zabbix server started. Same happens not only if you will make some kind of the typo, like I did right now, just wrote an A, but let's say you want to enter DB name, but you enter it like this. This will also not work. All the parameter names inside a Zabbix configuration file are case sensitive. So if the parameter starts with an uppercase DB and N, then you need to write it exactly the same. If you will do that in lowercase, you won't be able to start your Zabbix server binary. And the same stuff affects also the other guys, like the agent, proxy, Java gateway. Yeah. Another one. How often, let's say, you might be experiencing some kind of the issue with your Zabbix component. Something isn't running, or something is utilizing more memory than it should, or the CPU usage, or some kind of the items. Long story short, you need to troubleshoot the process. You know that it is possible to increase the debug level in the configuration file of any Zabbix component, and there it is, the debug level. Default is 3, which is a good level, and I do not recommend to change this up or down in the config file. So let's say if I wanted to make a debug, I can increase it here to, let's say, copy paste and make it level 4. But what's the problem? First of all, for any Zabbix component to apply the changes in the config file, you will have to restart the Zabbix service. So Zabbix server in this case, which may not be an option if you're running a production instance. At the same time, if let's say I have a chance to do that and I restart the Zabbix server process, this change in the config file will apply to all of the internal processes of the Zabbix server, like ps-grep Zabbix server, many of them. 38 processes. I would increase the debug level for all of them, and that would produce like a big amount of information. And if it is a production instance and you could have 200 or even 500 processes, that would make even bigger mess. So instead of doing that, let's say I wanna debug my history syncer, and let's do the grep history. Yeah, let's do the grep on a syncer. There we go. So we have 4 history syncers from the box, and if I want to increase a debug on one of them, you can just type Zabbix_server -R, which means a runtime command, log_level increase equals, and then the process ID of which you want to increase the debug. So 27610, 27610. Click enter. Command sent successfully. Right now we've increased the debug level only of this history syncer. We can do the tail of the log file again. There we go. We're getting a debug information about one history syncer. Let's say we done the troubleshooting, we found the issue, and we want to decrease it back. So instead of increase, type decrease. That's it. It's again in the default 3rd level. See, the log level has been decreased to 3, and we're back to normal. And it doesn't require us to restart the server binary process. Let's say if you've completely messed up, you've increased it 2 times for this process ID, then decreased it for another process ID, then you can also increase the debug level not by the process ID, but the process name. So we have pollers, right? So increase poller. And right now, we are getting the debug information about the pollers. Let's say we've increased this 2 times. And in the end, after the troubleshooting, I totally forgot what kind of level for which process is currently, and I don't know how to revert it back. Option 1, you can do systemctl restart Zabbix server, and the default debug level will be taken from the configuration file, or you can simply run the log level decrease multiple times, check the log file. You see that we're already on the minimal level for all of our processes. Then, so basically it means we're on level 1. Then increase level 2, level 3. Check again the log file, and level 2, so we need to increase it one more time. There we go. Level 3, the default debug level of the component. And again, this applies on all of the Zabbix components. And the last one I wanted to talk about today is Zabbix_server -R config cache reload. All the lowercase. What you get, command sent successfully. So let me actually draw how it looks like and what this thing does. We have a server, right, a Zabbix server, and I will write it like this. So collector processes, whatever, and then we have a config cache, this one. Then we have a DB, database, and a front end. So when you do any kind of the changes in the front end, you write the changes to the database. But the collector processes from the server are actually working with the configuration cache, not with the database directly. And in the Zabbix server side, we have internal process configuration syncer, which has one task: take the configuration from the database and populate the configuration cache. This, by default, is happening once per minute. And that is written in the config file of the Zabbix server, and it is called cache update frequency 60 seconds. So each 60 seconds, this guy, configuration syncer, will grab the fresh configuration from the database and populate the configuration cache. This is why most likely many times you've had an issue that you added some item in the front end and you saved everything, but still for some reason you need to wait normally a minute before the configuration syncer will populate the configuration cache and you will actually start to receive the data. This is even more interesting and important in terms of the proxies, because proxies also populate the configuration from the Zabbix server, and that happens not each minute, but by default once per hour. Let's say if we're talking about active proxies, active proxy once per hour will connect to the Zabbix server, request the configuration, and start the monitoring. So if I added a new item or a new low-level discovery rule or a new host to be monitored by a proxy in the front end, it will take at least 1 minute before the Zabbix server configuration will be populated. And then could take up to 1 hour until the Zabbix proxy configuration will be populated. And only then you will start to receive the data. Instead, we can type the Zabbix server underscore Zabbix underscore server minus R config cache reload. So this forces the configuration syncer to get the data, config data from the database and populate the config cache. And if you have an active Zabbix proxy, you can execute the same command just with the binary name Zabbix underscore proxy, not the server. And this will force the active proxy to connect to the Zabbix server and request a new config. Be aware that this works only for the active proxies. If you have a passive proxy, it is not possible. If you have a proxy config file where the proxy mode is passive and you will type this command, config cache reload, you will receive a message that this is supported only for the active proxy. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Well, of course, not the Docker, but Zabbix server -v, you can get the current version of your Zabbix server binary. That's about it. A quick lesson today, how to troubleshoot the typos and misconfiguration in the config file, and how you can increase or decrease the debug level of some separate processes without actually restarting the binary itself and making use of the debug levels inside a Zabbix. Just like usual, click like, post the comments, any questions. If you like the content we provide to you about a Zabbix monitoring software, then also, of course, click the subscribe button. And see you in a couple of days, so probably it will be next week. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.